Hello everyone and welcome back to the EL111 coursebook. In this video we're going to be going over the final part of Unit 3. This is highly requested, Unit 3C. So we're going to be talking about rules. So the main focus will be about rules. Let's take a look at some of the pictures here. I want you guys to take a second and tell me, virtually of course, what you see. So if you answered anything other than road signs for cars, you're mistaken. And yeah, so these are clearly signs that you see on the road. If you drive, you see these pretty regularly, I'd say. Are these types of signs common where you live? They are quite common because they tell us what to do and what not to do when driving. And there's a very high chance that if you ignore these, not only are you putting yourself and others in danger, but you could get a very hefty fine. So, yeah, these are some of the signs that we just discussed. Let's go to, okay, before we go to exercise 2, I'm not going to show the text. What I want you to see is take a look at the head of this text right here, the problem with rules, and pause the video for a bit and try to come up with ideas or what you might think the text is going to be talking about. I'm going to assume you just did that. You paused the video and did that. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the text one more time here, but this time I want you to pause the video once more, go through it quickly just to get a general idea of what the text is talking about, and then we'll move on. Okay, once more, I'm going to pretend that you've paused the video and you now have a general idea of what the text is about. Okay, so based on the text, we know it's about rules. The person talking doesn't really like rules, things like that, especially in very specific situations like driving. Now, let's go to exercise 2 here. What we're going to do is I want you to read this one more time, but this time you're now going to be focusing on very specific details. What do I mean by that? Is you're going to take out a pen and paper and read the questions and try to answer these using the details from the text. Okay? So take a bit of time if you need, pause the video, and then come back and I'll continue as if you've done these, and then you can check your answers with the ones that I have. So let's start with A. Which situations does the writer mention when he has to follow rules? If we go up top, it says, but it's when I get in my car, so when he drives. Oh, here we go. Everywhere I go, I'm being told what to do at work. So at work and even rules. Yes, so we have two things. We'll say driving and at work. B, according to the writer, what is wrong with traffic lights? Here, worst of all is the traffic light. It's green, so I go. It's red, so I stop. I don't even look to my left or right. I just drive. Okay, so according to the writer, that's apparently a bad thing. So we'll say just driving without having to look left or right. And put full stops here. How are roundabouts different from traffic lights from the driver's point of view? This can be seen when drivers meet at a roundabout. For example, yes, there's a rule about giving way, yep, but often several cars reach the roundabout at the same time. And what do? We look at each other, read each other's intentions, and together we decide who will go first. In other words, we cooperate. So to put this in writing, we could say something like, roundabouts allow us to read each other's intentions. Make sense? Okay, let's go to D. What changes to road use are being made in the USA? Here you go. Traffic lights are being replaced with roundabouts across the USA. So we'll literally put that as it is. Traffic lights are being replaced by roundabouts. E, what is a naked street? That's a very funny name. Um, a naked street. Here it is. The idea behind these naked streets is that drivers pay more attention. Actually, no. If we go above it, and some countries have experimented with removing all signals and instructions, even the white lines in the middle of the road. The idea behind these naked streets. So to find out the word or something that you don't know the meaning of, you can usually go before that or afterwards to get a general idea of the context or what it means. So the idea behind these naked streets is that drivers pay more attention. Okay. So we could say a naked street is, okay, one that doesn't have signs or white lines. Okay? So basically, a street that doesn't have any signs or even any lanes or white lines or anything like that. Let's go to F. What is unique about shared spaces? Let's go back to the text. There has been an increase in shared spaces in town centers. These areas are shared between drivers, cyclists, and pedestrians, with no lanes telling people where they should be. Okay, so what is unique about shared spaces? We can say they are, let me actually put that in capital. They are shared by drivers, cyclists, and pedestrians. Okay, so these were the answers. I hope yours were similar to these. Driving at work, just driving without having to look left or right. Roundabouts allow us to read each other's intentions. Traffic lights are being replaced by roundabouts. One that doesn't have signs or white lines. And finally, they are shared by drivers, cyclists, and pedestrians. Okay. Now let's go down here. Let me actually put this like so. Read the article again and answer the questions. Okay, we're going to go over the questions. If you want, you can pause the video and read it one more time, but I'd prefer to read the questions and answer them using the text as well. That works too. So, what is the writer's main idea? The main idea would be problem. The writer has a problem with rules based on the header of the text, and based on his overall attitude. It seems that he does not like being told what to do whatsoever. Which underlined sentences, 1 to 3, summarizes the main idea of the article? So to do that, we have to read the 3 sentences that are underlined. Here we have the first one. But the worst of all is the traffic light. It's green, so I go. It's red, so I stop. I don't even look to my left or right. I just drive. 2, because we are always being told what to do, we don't actually have to think or make decisions for ourselves. And the sad thing is, it is so unnecessary because humans are actually very good at organizing themselves. 3, we look at each other, read each other's intentions, and together we decide who will go first. In other words, we cooperate. Out of these 3, which one do you guys think sums up them or summarizes the main idea best? Personally, I would say the second one. It summarizes things, but it makes the most sense as to what the main idea is. Basically, rules and having a problem with rules. We're always being told what to do. We don't actually have to think or make decisions for ourselves. Yada yada yada. Okay. Which sentences support the main idea? Well, there's quite a lot. We could say this third one supports the main idea. We look at each other, read each other's intentions, and together we decide who will go first. We could also say this right here supports the main idea. The worst of all is the traffic light. It's green, so I go. It's red, so I stop. I don't even look to my left or right. It supports the main idea that too many rules, and I have a problem with it as a writer. So, yeah. Do you think the writer is giving a balanced view of the argument? What do you guys think? Do you guys think this is a fair, balanced view of the argument? If you said yes, you are wrong. This is a very biased view. The writer is only focusing from his perspective, which is negative. He's not presenting any positive things about rules. So this, to me, seems very biased and not balanced at all. Okay, now let's go to the next page. Do you think shared spaces are a good idea? You guys remember shared spaces from the text? Are they a good idea? And can you think of any problems that might occur? I want you to pause the video and think about this for a second. Go back to the text if you have to. Again, we've both read the text now, so I'll go first and you can compare your answers to mine. Do you think shared spaces are a good idea? Absolutely not. I don't know about you guys, but if you've driven any appreciable amount, you know that shared spaces are not really good for anyone. They're not good for drivers. They're not good for the people walking. It's dangerous. And even cyclists. A lot of people don't check their blind spots, and cyclists have a tendency to be in your blind spot more often than not. And again, hitting someone in a car, although it's bad, it's not as bad as hitting a cyclist because they could fall over and die. So I don't think shared spaces are a good idea. And I've mentioned some of the problems. If you have more, or if you have a different point of view, definitely put it down. Let's take a look at the focus here, writing. Identifying the main idea and supporting points. When reading, it is important to be able to identify the main idea of the text. This is the general message the writer wants to convey to the reader. It is the reason for writing. So basically what this means is when you're writing something, every single text or thing that you're ever going to read has to have a main idea, something that it is revolving upon. And if you can't make out the main idea, then the text doesn't really make sense now, does it? So this is why it is very important to be able to distinguish the main idea from perhaps other points that relate to the main idea. I hope that makes sense. Because at the end of the day, the person writing the text wants one thing, and that is to convey their main idea onto you, the reader. Okay? The main idea is usually supported by several other points. These points are often more specific and can be examples to illustrate the main idea. This is a great point. You have the main idea in the text, but what usually happens is the writer adds several extra points related to said main idea. Not the same thing, but it is related. Think of it as like the main idea being a dad, and the points are the kids. They have similarities, not exactly the same, but they help reassure, I guess, the reader about what the main idea is. Okay? And it also helps to illustrate and further explain the main idea and why the writer chose said main idea. Because if we go back, for example, in the text, we had a problem with rules, and it makes sense. But why do we have a problem with rules? These points explain it. For example, traffic light and the fact that you have to follow it. You don't have to look left or right. This is not the main idea, but it makes sense. It illustrates the main idea. Okay? And same thing with the other example as well. We look at each other, read each other's intentions. Okay? So this as to why the main idea exists in the first place. Okay. Now that we've gotten that out of the way and we have a better understanding of the main idea and its supported several points, let's go to exercise 5. Reader response to the article here. Does this change your mind about anything in the article? So I want you to pause the video, take 30 seconds, read this article, and when you come back, we'll talk about it. Okay, so I'm going to continue the video, obviously, because I've already read this, and hopefully you have too. Would you say this changes your mind? For me, this was already how I felt. I never agreed to this text. So in my case, it's the same. But if you're someone that agreed with this and you had a problem with rules and you've read this, does this change your mind? If so, why? Okay? So for me, I had the same view as this gentleman right here. So mine is the same. I do not agree. Now, we're going to read this again. I want you to focus on the main idea and the supporting points. And which of these supporting points do you think is most important and why? So let's go over this together. Again, pause the video before we do any of this. Do this on your own first. This is reading, you guys. I don't have much to work with here, but you should pause the video and read on your own so you get a better idea of how to identify the main idea and its supporting points. So, understand the writer's frustration with rules, but shared spaces are not the answer. In fact, they are dangerous. Shared spaces are not the answer. In fact, they are dangerous. And although a street might look more attractive with the traffic lights and signs removed, it is simply not safe. This right here gives us a very good idea about what the main idea is. Shared spaces are simply not the answer. They are not safe. Now, let's take a look at some of the supporting points. Partially sighted person. It has caused serious problems. Without traffic lights and a pedestrian crossing, it is impossible for me to cross the road safely. And it's not only vulnerable people like myself who suffer from these projects. It also shows that one survey, this is one more point, has shown that many pedestrians feel unsafe sharing this space with cars. Okay, so this is another point. There's one more point. There is evidence that a lot of drivers dislike these shared spaces because they are not sure which spaces they can use. So we have 3 different supporting points, and we have our main point, or main idea. Which of these supporting points do you think is most important and why? I don't know which one you chose, but for me personally, I'd have to say the fact that as a partially sighted person or someone that is disabled, this new naked person, oh God, naked street in town has caused serious problems because to me, this supporting point makes sense. How can someone cross if they can't see? And there's no signs telling cars to stop or that this is an area where people come and go a lot or this is a school. So this to me is the most serious as it can cause the most accidents. The other 2 are important, but this to me is the most important. Okay? Let's see. Okay. Now, here's what we're going to do for exercise 7, since we don't have pairs. The writer does suggest, if we go take a look at the text, that having fewer rules, actually, let me just double check that, can be applied to other areas of life as well. How would we go about doing that? Here you go. The question is, how can these ideas be applied to other areas of life? So here, talk about what would happen if there were fewer rules in the areas below. This will be totally up to you, which, you know what that means. It means you have to pause the video and do these one by one. I'll go over them briefly, but again, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just what you think, and do you think fewer rules is good or bad, and how can it be applied? For example, let's take a look at work. Having fewer rules at work could be a good thing as it allows for more creativity and it just feels like a democracy instead of someone always telling you to do this, do that, and do it a very specific way. It kills any creativity and any ideas that you might have to make work better, I guess. So having fewer rules would benefit at work. What about banking? If we're talking banking as in finances and things like perhaps you accessing your funds and things like that, I would say fewer rules poses a threat because this is money we're talking about, and one wrong move, or if you have fewer rules and people decide to not follow it, your chances of theft, especially online, goes up significantly. So this would be a negative. Childcare. This will depend. I mean, you put too many rules and the child grows up not being able to do anything themselves. But on the other side of that coin, if you don't put any rules, it's kind of hard to basically control your child, especially as they grow older. So I would say fewer rules if they are a strict parent is definitely helpful at, again, similar to work, sparking creativity and allowing the child to be more independent as they grow older. Education. Um, I would say education would benefit greatly from fewer rules. I think it allows students to express themselves, even if they know perhaps it might be wrong or they can fail and try again. Because some strict teachers don't allow any of that. And yeah, it just, you end up with students that are afraid of rejection, afraid to voice their opinions, and that's not good. So, and even on the topic of education, not exactly education, but rather perhaps like if they're at an organization and they have to ask questions or take permission to do any single thing, such as drinking water or standing up to stretch or something, then I don't know. I feel like that's too strict. So fewer rules definitely applies here. And finally, health. I think depending on the context, if we're talking health as in general health, it depends. Like if you have healthcare would be different, obviously, but I'm talking about health in itself. I mean, if you're a healthy person and you go from being healthy to unhealthy over the span of 5 years, and now there's very strict rules and things you have to do, I think that's for your own good. I mean, at the end of the day, it's your body, your choice, you do whatever you want, but do you really want to, though? I mean, these rules are in place to protect you as someone that, I don't know, has high blood pressure or you're diabetic or something like that. You suffer from, numerous diseases and you shouldn't be eating, doing this or doing that. Then I think these rules are justified because they protect you and they prolong your lifespan. Okay, so these were my takes on these. Please, please, please have your own. I hope you paused the video and you had your own answers as well. Anyway, let's go to exercise 8. Here we have a writing. Nice. What I want you to do is you're going to be writing a comment similar to this one in response to the article. So you're not going to be responding to this guy, but rather the person that originally had a problem with rules in the previous page. Okay? I want you to include a main idea and supporting points. This main idea could be you agreeing or disagreeing, and your supporting points are going to be why do you agree and why do you disagree. Okay? So everything that we've done so far, I want you to put it all in a comment or response that is similar to this one. Okay? Now, let's talk about turn taking. Let's go to the focus first. Appropriate turn taking is a vital skill in communication, and sometimes we need to check we understand the speaker, interrupt another person's turn, or keep our turn. What does this mean? So, as we humans communicate, have you ever talked to someone or had a conversation with someone, perhaps even an argument, and they turn take and they start talking and they cut you off? That is another way of communication. You do this subconsciously a lot, not necessarily cutting someone off, but rather turn taking. It's a part of who we are, but being aware of when to do certain things will greatly enhance your communication skills. So there's 3 main points, like we said. Here we have check we understand the speaker. So for example, if I say something like, sorry, do you mean the mall on the left? If they said like the mall on the right or something, then this is me turn taking, but I'm checking. Okay, I'm checking if I actually understand that speaker correctly. Oh, you mean the class in the second floor? Yes, I do. See what I mean? So these are some of the expressions that you can use. Sorry, do you mean that? You mean like, or are you saying that? Okay. These are called, the second part is called cooperative interruptions. This is where you interrupt someone, but cooperatively, which means you agree with them. For example, yes, I know what you mean when you decide to go down the slide and it hurts. This is me interrupting you, but cooperatively because I agree with you. Me too, I actually went to Egypt last week or whatever. Same thing. Exactly, I did. No. So this is you in cooperative interruption. Now, let's go to the last one, and it's in red for a reason. Intrusive interruptions. Intrusive interruptions is when you stop someone because you disagree with them. Okay? This is used to sometimes simply disagree with the person or disagree and change the subject or just change the subject. For example, say someone is blaming you for something. You can say, can I stop you there? And then explain your point of view. Or you can simply say, can I stop you there? And walk away. And it would be bad communication, but you get what I mean. So, okay, I'd just like to make a point here. If someone is perhaps explaining a graph and you'd like to add a point, or you think they missed a point or they're mistaken, you'd say, okay, I'd just like to make a point here. Or if you just cut someone off while they're talking, you can say, sorry to interrupt but I think we should do this instead of this. Or you say, sorry to interrupt, but I really have to go. I'm sorry. All of these. So these are called intrusive interruptions. Remember, none of these are inherently bad. It's just that they're used differently because when we communicate, we talk about different things. So sometimes I might agree with you, sometimes I might not. Okay? Finally, keeping your turn. Keeping your turn is when someone interrupts you, but you still want to finish your turn. So you could say, if someone's about to cut you off and they say, okay, I'd just like to make a point here, you say, I'm nearly finished. So I'm almost done, just let me finish. Or just one more thing, perhaps, you keep going. Say, for example, you talk about something and you know someone's about to raise a question. So they say, sorry to interrupt, but I think this question, you could say, I know what you're going to say, but let me finish, or let me explain. Okay? So these were, this was expression. This was appropriate turn taking. Now, let's go to exercise 1 here. We're going to be listening to 3 conversations about rules. What we're going to be doing is you have 3 different topics. We have conversation 1, 2, and 3. And I want you to pause the video, take a look at these questions first, so you have a good idea of what to expect. And then I want you to listen to these and answer the questions as it's going. Okay? So here we go.
Conversation 1.
The problem we have at this university is that our students are not independent. They are given too much support.
Sorry? Do you mean by their teachers?
Yes, by their teachers, by their parents, by everyone. They aren't ready to take responsibility for themselves. We need fewer rules and more opportunities for students to make their own decisions.
Conversation 2.
What's the matter, Jan?
I'm just reading the staff handbook. This company has a lot of rules.
You mean like dress codes and so on?
Exactly. There's a rule for everything. Shoes, ties, haircuts.
Yes, I know what you mean.
Conversation 3.
The employees of our banks are intelligent people. They're experts in their field. We have to trust them to make the right decision, and they can't do that without...
Can I stop you there? We've trusted them in the past, and they've made huge mistakes, but...
That's exactly why we need to have plenty of rules in place. That's why...
OK. I'd just like to make a point here. We all...
I'm nearly finished. The government really needs to change the current regulations.
Okay, so this was the audio. If you need to listen to it one more time, you can rewind the video back. That's totally fine. But let's go over these together. In conversation 1, what is the first speaker's main point? I would say that the first speaker's main point is that students are not independent. They rely too much on stuff. And then she mentioned, obviously, some supporting points. In conversation 2, do the two speakers agree with each other? They do, yes, based on the expressions that they were giving. There's a lot of cooperative interruptions, so yes, they do agree with each other. In conversation 3, do we know what the third speaker's main point is? Well, there was a lot of intrusive interruptions, as you guys noticed. We could either say the main point is misunderstood or not even there. But if I had to guess a main point, it is probably about having more rules and regulations in place. But again, you can't say for certain because of how many intrusive interruptions there were. Okay? So this was exercise 1. I've done something similar to this in the previous. I'll go over this quickly, but since we're not in pairs, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to choose, think of me as me and you, the person viewing this. I'm going to choose positives for why there needs to be rules, and I want you to think of all the negatives for these sentences. For example, children need a lot of rules at school. I'll say something like, yes, because that stops children from being reckless, and it stops children from being lazy when they know there are consequences if they break said rules. Now, you as the person watching, I want you to give me a negative outlook on why a lot of rules are not good. You could say something like, it kills any creativity. It, shuts down independence for the children. Things like that. Let's go to B. The best bosses don't tell their employees how to do their jobs. I'll choose a positive for this. I'd say that's good because, like we said, again, it tells employees that they can be flexible and creative with how they do things. As long as the work is getting done on time, that's really all that matters. Okay? So you'd have to give me a negative point on that. C, the more laws a country has, the better its people behave. My positive would be yes, because it tells people that if these laws are to be broken, you will be punished. And if the laws are fair and things make sense, then the country runs smoother. Okay? What else do we have? I think that's about it. This one is, we need 2 students, and this will be quite hard virtually, so let's skip this. Think about rules and support in your own life. What rules were enforced by the agents below? Okay, you can use some of these words here to, obviously we can't discuss these and use some of the expressions we learned, but for the sake of this exercise, let's just talk about the rules that are currently or were enforced when you were younger by these agents. For example, government, of course, yes, you have rules that you don't break, ranging from things like driving to the way you handle your bank account, your paperwork, your lease, your contract. All of these things are controlled. Parents, I would say rules were a lot more when I was younger. I mean, they still are, but definitely not as much as when one is younger and still learning, for obvious reasons, obviously. So yeah, some of the rules were probably don't stay up too late, don't come home too late, no driving until you have a driver's license. Yeah, these are the ones that are off the top of my head. School, oh boy. Okay, what rules were enforced at school, I would say something like not being able to drink water without permission, not being able to stand up without permission, not being able to speak without permission. Sounds a lot like prison. Um, and again, obviously, that's a big one, not being able to use the bathroom without permission, or even leave the school without permission, which that last one I understand. University, I would say university is rules like no cheating, no talking during classes. What else? What else? I wouldn't call it a rule, but it does kind of seem like a rule, which is to be engaged in class and someone that talks during class and is showing that they know what they're talking about. So that's something that it wasn't strictly enforced, but it was there, especially for students that never really or showed up just for the sake of showing up and not really understanding anything. So that's university. Work, I would say work is a little more strict than university due to it being work. So having things like deadlines, there are rules that you don't cross. Being on time, that's an important rule. Deadlines, being on time. What else? Things like having to help people, even if you don't want to. You can't just run away and decide, oh, I'm not going to help people today. It's important to help people, even with a smile on your face, even if you're not feeling well. So these were all rules as well. I think on that note, that concludes Unit 3. I hope you guys learned something new today. I hope you had fun, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.